What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. On to our mailbag. Here's our first question. This one is not necessarily a question, just an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about the rankings. So what is my rationale for putting LeBron 8, KD 9, Steph 10? Why did I have them ranked in that order? Now, mind you, I have them minusculely separated. This is not tiers of players. They're all jammed up with each other, right? As I've said multiple times, from 5 to 11, they're all right next to each other, in my opinion. The tiers are more indicated as a separation in level of play. So here's the deal. Steph was a clear third place for me. In addition to missing the playoffs, even if we all agree that it mostly had to do with the roster, Steph just didn't play well to end the season. Post All-Star break, Steph Curry, 23 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 57% true shooting. LeBron James, 28 points, 8 rebounds, 10 assists, 67% true shooting. Like, that's just a simple example to show you guys the giant chasm in the level of play between those two guys. 10 percentage points in true shooting, 10 additional assists, 3 additional rebounds, 5 additional points every game. KD and LeBron both are just simply playing at a higher level than Steph. Now, I understand Steph had 2 really good games at the end of the Olympics. And I personally am really excited about that, and that's a big part of why I think he's going to have a bounce-back year. But I can't just take those 2 games to erase months of additional evidence that KD and LeBron are just playing at a higher level right now. And then between KD and LeBron, I thought LeBron was clearly at the higher level among the 3 for all the reasons that I just broke down in the 2 breakdowns that I did. So that naturally left KD in the middle. So again, I thought the LeBron, KD, Steph in that order was pretty straightforward. Had a bunch of Steph-related questions, so let's get into some of those right now. You are entitled to your opinion, but having Steph Curry below Anthony Davis, KD, or Anthony Edwards at this point in their careers is blasphemous. AD cannot, I repeat, cannot be a number 1 option on a championship team. He is probably the best defender in the league, but he's insanely limited on offense. If your list is just based on October through June, picking the best player for your team, you really taking AD over Steph sounds a bit like Lakers fan bias to me, coming from a Lakers fan myself. Ant is still way too raw to be taken over Curry, and KD's team underachieves time and time again, despite him really being a plug-and-play masterpiece of a player. It's just that, you can't count on him being that alpha dog, and Steph is just a killer. One could even argue that Tatum should be below Curry too, but defensive versatility, age, availability, and champ status certainly give him the case to be above. But again, are you really taking Tatum over your number 1 guy, as your number 1 guy over Steph friggin' Curry? Nah. As for Embiid, I don't have a problem with him at 11. He's an overhyped crybaby that's always hurt, always sulking, foul grifting, and just looking for a whistle if he can't assert physical dominance or if his jumper isn't falling. Way too one-dimensional, way too fragile, way too mentally weak to take for an 82-game run, especially deep in the playoffs when his parlor tricks stop working with the refs. I'd take any of these top 10 guys over him any day of the week. Awesome show, brother. Keep up the good work and keep creating a platform for us hoop lovers to talk real basketball, unbiased and educated, based on arguments and facts, not just blatant smack talk, fangirling, and personal preference/opinion. Thank you for taking the time to break down your basketball case. Thanks for supporting the show. One of my favorite things about what we do here at Hoops Tonight is make just a community for hoopers to hang out and talk basketball. So that means a lot to me that you guys see it that way. I'll go kind of down the list. So the first comment you made about Anthony Davis saying that he's insanely limited on offense, I kind of disagree with that. First of all, we know AD can be the best player on a championship team because Tatum just did it. So you certainly can build a championship roster around Anthony Davis. You just probably would need a little more help than some of the guys that are above him, right? As far as the offense thing, I think I think Anthony Davis had a rough series 2 years ago, the Western Conference Finals series. I thought Jokic kicked his ass. I thought AD kind of went out soft. I didn't think he fought hard enough in that circumstance. I think he kind of let Jokic walk all over him. But if you just kind of pull that specific series out, he's been an incredible playoff player outside of that. He just averaged 28 points per game in the playoffs against Denver. He was straight up barbecuing Jokic in one-on-one. He ran 34 ISOs and post-ups in the series and got 40 points. That's 1.18 points per possession, which is literally amazing. And I mean, we got obviously the 2022-2021 seasons, he was hurt, but it's 2020, best player, or not best player, but like just as good as LeBron. Like I had LeBron 1 in 84 after that playoff run. So like AD was basically at LeBron's level for a title run and was an incredible offensive player and an incredible defensive player. And then I want to say he had 13 playoff games before 2020, and he averaged like 31 points and 13 rebounds a game. So like the idea that he's an insanely limited offensive player is just something that I would disagree with. He just had a really rough offensive series against Denver 2 years ago when they faced him in the Western Conference Finals. Now, is he as good offensively as some of the other superstars in the league? No, but he's still an insanely good offensive player. Like, and here's the other thing too, even beyond the on-ball stuff, I think it's unfair if we give Jokic like a ton of bonus points for being this deadly roll man who like catches on the roll with Jamal Murray and hits those floaters in the lane. And there's no doubt that Jokic is probably the best at that, and he's certainly better than AD. But AD is also one of the best roll men in the league. And he's a huge part of what makes the Laker pick and roll attack so deadly, because he can short roll and make floaters, right? Or he can short roll to the foul line and catch and make quick ISO moves off the catch. He can roll a little bit further into the lane to make floaters, right? Or quick dribble moves into hook shots. He can also roll hard to the rim, and he brings vertical gravity, like the actual spacing to be able to throw lob passes to him. Like AD is a far more useful offensive player than I think people give him credit for. As for Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, without getting into all the individual comparisons, here's what I'll say. Remember that if I said everyone is healthy and the series is starting tomorrow, I'm doing a different list. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going Jokic and Luka, and then I have LeBron 3. Steph's probably 4 for me on that list. So when everyone's healthy, I do think Steph is a better player than Ant. I do think Steph is a better player than KD. I do think Steph is a better player than AD. But the point is, Steph hasn't been playing at that level as of late. Here's a simple stat to break this down. Steph, in his last 19 games to end last year, failed to reach 25 points in 9 of them. Think about that. When they desperately needed him to score because they don't have much offensive talent, he couldn't even get to 25 points in half the games over the final fourth of the season. I am genuinely, sincerely rooting for Steph to have a bounce back year. And I believe he will. But it's all theoretical at this point, which makes him a riskier pick, which puts him lower on this type of list. As far as the Embiid piece goes, I'm actually surprised at how many people kind of agreed with me. There are obviously some pissed off Sixers fans. That was to be expected. But it seems to me like most of the other people, at least maybe not as far down as 11, but at least agree that Embiid can't be on that top tier superstar list anymore when you're factoring in all of his physical limitations in terms of health and his inability to impact winning as well as he does in the regular season when he gets to the postseason. And the thing with Embiid too is now he's over 30. So it's not like the health issues are going to get better for him at this point. Putting together a top 25 list is tough work considering all the talent in the league, so I commend you doing the work and sharing with the viewers. If your criteria for the list is based on who you would pick for an 82-game season out of a vacuum, it doesn't make sense to put Curry at 10, considering the lack of help on his team was directly responsible for the efficiency slumps this past year. When you put Curry on an all-star team or an Olympic roster, or even when his team plays like above-average NBA players, a la the 2022 playoffs, he is clearly an MVP candidate even in this late stage of his career. An important note about Steph's game is the attention he demands when he's on the floor, which cannot be quantified from counting stats since he's arguably the most heavily guarded player in NBA history. Put Shea on the Warriors, and I would argue they don't even sniff a play-in spot in the stacked Western Conference. Having won the chip only 2 years ago over a better team holds far more weight than Ant or Shea, who are projected to have better seasons, neither of which are guarded like Steph. So here's the thing. As far as I agree that the Warriors are extremely limited, in terms of personnel. And I also agree that made things harder for Steph. Here's where it's different, though. The 2021 team was very limited as well. They had no Klay Thompson, if you remember. They had funky role players, guys like Kelly Oubre Jr. and Brad Wanamaker and Kent Bazemore. And yet, in that season, Steph averaged 32 points per game on 66% true shooting. He had 26 games with at least 35 points. He wasn't even close to that level this year. So, like, if your case is Steph is still awesome, he just has a bad team, what happened in 2021? Like, that's where I have an issue. And that team had the exact same issue. Made it to the play-in, got eliminated in the play-in tournament. And so, yeah, like, I I sympathize with Steph for the plight, and I do believe he still has the ability to get to a top 10 level this year, which is why I put him in the top 10, and I expect him to bounce back. But he was down in every major statistical category last year and was tailing off at the tail end of the season. So, again, as I mentioned, big game tomorrow night, give me Steph as the fourth best player in the league. But that's not the reality of this season. There's a great deal of risk involved with Steph being your foundational piece for this season. Therefore, I had him at 10 for the sake of the way this list works. I'm shocked Curry is this low. I understand why, because he had a down year, because he's old. But man, I might be biased as a Warriors diehard, but I don't know how you could watch the medal rounds in the Olympics and not feel like Steph is one of the 5 best players in the world. Here's the thing. The medal rounds are a big source of optimism for me as well, but 2 games when the chips are down, that falls into what I was talking about earlier. Yeah, you're right. 2 games, chips are down. I think Steph is the 4th best player in the world. But this isn't 2 games where the chips are down. This is 82 games and 4 series spanning 9 months. Totally different type of criteria. Here's another Steph one. Bunch of them. But we don't. I promise we get into some other stuff. Hey, Jason, I've agreed for the most part so far in your rankings. However, Steph's ranking is the first time I strongly disagree with your ranking, and I'm a non-Warriors fan, by the way. You begin your argument by referring to Steph's extended slump to end the regular season and through the majority of the Olympics. I think this is fair criticism. However, I would argue Tatum's slump is equally as bad, if not worse, than Steph's, and therefore should be ranked lower than Steph in the rankings. I believe the main factor in this argument is their scenarios. Steph was dealing with unideal situations in Golden State, unlike Draymond's. Steph was dealing with unideal situations in Golden State, like Draymond's emotional immaturity, Klay's frustrations, tons of lineup changes, roster injuries, etc. Meanwhile, Tatum was operating on the most talented roster in the league. I don't think it's fair to drop Steph this far below the environment he was working in. Besides that, Curry is still a much better half-court shot maker than Tatum, which is your main factor when making this list. Not just as an on-ball creator, but through his off-ball ability. The amount of quality shots he generates for his team simply by existing in the half-court greatly exceeds anything that Tatum showed during the playoffs in the last half of the year. I'd also argue for Curry above Ant and AD for the same reason, although the Tatum comparison is my primary reason for commenting. Love the show. Thanks for supporting the show. I mean, it means a lot to me. So, a couple things. Tatum slump's a little different. Tatum is a in his prime athlete who's in a jump shooting slump. Steph Curry declined in every single phase of the game last year, including the defensive end of the floor, including just his ability to get separation from defenders, all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily the same to me. I will admit that I ranked Tatum under the impression that his shot is going to come back around. Because again, over a large sample in his career, he's been a good jump shooter. He's had a bad jump shooting stretch. I mean, we've had our criticisms with Tatum in terms of off the dribble shooting, but he should still be a much, much better catch and shoot player than he has been. He's just been in a slump. But again, it's a little different when you're Tatum's age. You're in your late 20s, you're in your prime. I would be shocked if Tatum didn't come into next season with a revamped jump shot ready to go. But like the bottom, let's just take Tatum for an example as what I mean when I talk about the value over the 82, okay? Let's say I drafted Tatum because I had, the pick that I have Tatum ranked at, which I'm not going to reveal yet. But let's say I drafted Tatum. I'm going to get 75 games out of him. Like he's going to play 75 games. Or at least around there. I think he played 74 the last 2 years, right? So like going to play mid-70s in games. He's going to bring motor every single night because he's in his 20s and he's just young and, he just has a lot of that youthful exuberance, right? He's going to play hard. We're going to get the better version of Tatum the vast majority of nights. 3, he's going to be a foundational piece to my defense and rebounding backline. I'm going to be able to use him to guard star forwards if I need to. I'm going to be able to use him to guard guards even if I need to. I'm going to be able to use him to guard centers if I want to, just like Boston did through their entire playoff run. I can use him as the low man if I need to. I could count on him to help secure the defensive rebounding part of my defensive backline. That's a huge asset to me as I'm building a team around him. 4, he's going to give me somewhere between 27 and 30 points per game. That's basically guaranteed. He's going to give me 8 or 9 rebounds. That's basically guaranteed. He's going to give me 5+ assists. It's a super safe bet. If I take Tatum, I know what I'm getting from October all the way to June. If I take Steph, there's two versions of that story. There's everything somehow breaks right and he gets back to form and he stays healthy and I get superstar Steph. And yeah, you're damn right. That's a better player. Put it simply, guys, like basketball is a team sport. If I put Steph on the Boston Celtics for Jason Tatum, the Celtics are winning the title again. So like, yeah, I'm not debating that Tatum's had it easy. Of course he has. He's flat out had it easy. He had the easiest title run I've seen from a star in a very long time. Right? So like, I'm not trying to debate that, but we're looking at these guys in a vacuum. If I was drafting players at Tatum's age, I know I'm getting 75 games. I know I'm getting high motor. I'm getting excellent defense and rebounding, and I'm getting 27 and 5, or at least in terms of points and assists. He is a super safe bet. And so in this list that has a very, very tight grouping from 5 to 11, I'm giving Tatum a slight edge for the 82. Now, to be clear, if I had to win a single game tomorrow or a single series tomorrow, give me Steph over Tatum 100 out of 100 times. I do not think Tatum is better at basketball than Steph. I just think he's younger and healthier and more likely to provide more winning impact over a 9-month span where anything can happen. And I know I've explained that 100 times during this list, but I just feel like I need to hammer that home. The rankings are not important. The basketball talk is the only thing that matters. It's our next comment. Amen. We do this to kill time in the summer and to give us something to argue about. But in the words of Kevin Durant, when October comes around, it's check ball, and we're playing basketball, and everyone's 0-0, and every player's averaging 0.0 rebounds, 0 assists. Let's see what everyone can do. If I have Steph at 10 and I'm actively rooting for him to bounce back, that has no bearing on what actually is going to happen for the Warriors this year, and we're going to cover it thoroughly. This is what we do during the summer, but what I love to do, my favorite thing about this show is to talk about basketball games. It's why I was so thankful for those Team USA games this summer. Well, how great was that we got another couple dozen games between Team USA and some of the other teams that we covered to just talk about basketball, actual basketball games that are actually happening. And so I appreciated that comment because that is the truth. The rankings are not important. The basketball talk, well, I would just remove talk from that, just say the basketball is the only thing that matters. And that's what I love to talk about the most. And that's what we're going to do literally here in less than 2 months. Can you believe that? We're less than 2 months away. We are 1 month away from training camp, guys. It's right around the corner. Next question, or I should say comment. Y'all have to understand this is a business. Having Curry at 10 is going to get him a lot of clicks and engagement. He knows Curry is top 5 at worst. This is just silly. I mean, the Warriors are probably still our largest fan base within the Hoops Tonight community. We have some big ones, right? Like we have a lot of Laker fans, a lot of Denver Nugget fans, a lot of Dallas Mavericks fans, a lot of Boston Celtics fans. We've built up like certain fan bases that we have a good chunk of that follow our show. But I still think the Warriors are the largest fan base that we have. And a big part of that is Steph. Steph's one of the most popular players in the world. But like I would have gotten more views by putting Steph number 1. That's what would have gotten views. But it's legitimately hard for me to do this and to actually put these guys in the right spot. And I'm working really hard to follow my own criteria. It was tough for me to put KD, Steph, and LeBron as low as I did. But I'm not here to propagandize. I'm not here to lie and say things I don't believe for clicks. That's not even how it works. I put KD, Steph, and LeBron where I would draft them in a snake draft style, or a snake draft it's not even relevant, but just in a straight up draft between 25 teams, starting with all 450 players, just to start a franchise with. That's the entire purpose of it, only for this upcoming season from October to June. I put Steph at 10 because I view him as the 10th safest bet to build a franchise around for this upcoming season for 82 games and 4 series. Dude is saying, I still think he's top 10, like that's a compliment. It is a compliment. Steph didn't play at a top 10 level last year. Steph did not have a top 10 season last year by any measure. Guys like Donovan Mitchell had a better season. Guys like Jalen Brunson had a better season. Like there are a lot of players who had better seasons than Steph Curry last year. I'm giving him top 10 as a payment of respect to what I believe he is capable of on a better roster, and because I think he's going to bounce back. I'm projecting a better season from Steph next year. That's why I have him at number 10. He requires a ton of regular season support as well as postseason support. Who are you talking about, Tatum or Embiid? And you got Tatum higher, that's comedy. So, in my opinion, Tatum is the far more available regular season player, and he's actually been a better playoff player than Embiid, including outplaying him head-to-head. Specifically in Game 7 a few years back, he exposed one of Embiid's biggest weaknesses that we talked about on this show, his ability to come out and guard in space, either switching in pick and roll or coming up to the level of the screen. Tatum was just repeatedly torching him in that Game 7. So putting Tatum over Embiid was a very easy decision for me. He's a more available regular season player, and he's been a better postseason player in his career. That was just a no-brainer for me. Here's another basketball case from somebody as it associates to Embiid, specifically with regard to Anthony Davis. Hey, Jason, love the video. I know you haven't released AD's ranking, but here's a basketball reason why I'm taking Embiid over Anthony Davis. First, both players have struggled with injuries. I know AD has been more durable than Embiid the past 2 years, but it's undeniable that if you're concerned with both's long-term health in any given season, so durability is mostly a wash between these two players. Second, I think Embiid's playoff struggles are almost exclusively due to injury, whereas AD's playoff struggles post-2020 have been consistency and mentality related. Especially against Jokic in the last couple playoff runs, AD would have 30-plus points one night and then 15 or 16 the next night, even though he wasn't injured. Commentators often lament during games how AD seems to be out of it and not being aggressive, which is never a problem for Embiid. AD post-2020 has not been that great of a playoff performer in my view, at least not good enough for the Lakers to beat Denver. Finally, and most importantly, Embiid eats AD's lunch every time they play. Yes, it's regular season, but Embiid is 7-1 against AD in their last two matchups. Embiid had 38 and 12 and a 30-point triple-double on 75% and 60% shooting, respectively. AD's best case for being higher than Embiid is he's a much better defender than Embiid. The fact that his superior defense doesn't affect Embiid when they play is evidence to me that Embiid is a full tier above AD as a player. Appreciate the content, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the rankings. Again, thank you for taking the time to break down your basketball case, and thank you for supporting the show. It means a lot to me. So, starting with injury risk, I disagree there. I don't think it's a wash between both players. AD has had some health concerns, particularly in the 2021 and 2022 seasons, but he's been good since then. And I actually think it's far more likely that Embiid has a health-related issue this year than AD. Now, obviously, anything can happen, and we'll see. But my read on things is like Embiid is a guy that like it almost feels like a certainty that he'll break down, whereas AD it feels like it's a maybe. And so I don't think that they're on the same tier, although I agree with you that both of them do have some health concerns. I just think it's Embiid to a larger extent. As I mentioned earlier, AD did have a rough series in 2023 against Denver. There's no question about it. And I was very critical of him after that series. But he's been literally awesome in every playoff run outside of that. Even just before that series. Like before the Denver series where they got swept, AD was like so good defensively in the Golden State Warriors series that every adjustment that both teams was making was geared around the Warriors trying to avoid AD and the Lakers trying to keep AD in the action. That's how dominant he was defensively in that playoff run. He was the best player on the Lakers because LeBron wasn't as good. He was playing with that hurt foot, if you remember, during that playoff run. So, like, he was awesome in the playoff run before the Nuggets series. Then this past year, I thought he basically played Jokic to a draw. He averaged 28 points and 16 rebounds. Like, straight up fried Nikola Jokic one-on-one. Then again, obviously hurt 2021 and 2022, but 2020, incredible both ends of the floor. They win the title. First 13 playoff games before 2020, he averaged 31 and 13. So, like, I think AD's playoff resume is substantially better than Embiid's. Just flat out, bar none. I don't think it's close, to be honest. And to put it more aggressively, I just think AD is a better basketball player in that setting because he's so good defensively, because he thrives in rock fights, because he can, like, win when things get ugly, because his impact on winning is not tied to whether or not he's getting to the foul line or knocking down his jump shot. Now, here's the thing. Everything with Embiid is theoretical. He has a remarkably dominant level that he can get to. He's certainly had remarkably dominant regular seasons that have eclipsed what AD has done in the regular season. But we can keep imagining that all coming together all we want. We can imagine Embiid just wrecking ball everybody through the playoffs. Hell, I've been imagining it. We talked about it on the show. But for whatever reason, that has never actually materialized. And then the last piece of it, to the big piece of our criteria, that like versatility, how easy it is to build around you. AD is much easier to build around. He's a prototypical 5-out big man who excels as a roll man, as a screening and rolling into space, as a scorer with and without the ball. He plays really well alongside other stars. He doesn't require the ball to be in his hands all the time. And he's the best defensive player in the world that can defend in any scheme that you want him to defend in. Deep drop, catch hedge, up at the level, blitzing, switching. He can do it all. So that's the thing. There's no doubt that Embiid's ceiling is higher than AD. That just goes without saying. But Embiid just can't get there often enough. And when things get to those higher levels, AD is just played at a much higher level far more consistently than Embiid. And again, yes, he has some offensive limitations, but in the regular season, even as I'm drafting players, if I draft AD, you know how much easier everything else gets for me at that point? Look at the Lakers defense. They were playing literally Austin Reeves, an average defensive player, D'Lo, a bad defensive player, Rui Hachimura, a bad defensive player, LeBron James, good defensive player when he's trying, most of the time he's not trying, and AD anchors it all and just hides them all. That's a huge asset to a general manager. Yeah, so it's hard to do this kind of thing, guys. It really is. It's painstaking. Let's say the two guys that everyone kept throwing out today. If I were to put Ant at 11 and AD at 10, you don't think Minnesota Timberwolves fans are going to be crying to me nonstop about how Anthony Edwards averaged 28 points on 60% true shooting in the playoffs and eliminated the defending champs? Straight up alpha dogged everybody on the Phoenix Suns and got within 3 wins of the NBA Finals. You don't think I'm going to have people crying about that? Anthony Davis, he was the 4th best player on the Olympic team, the 5th best player on the Olympic team. He is the best defensive player in the world. Just played Nikola Jokic to pretty much even in that. The differentiators in that series were Michael Porter Jr. And the fact that Rui was terrible. The swing. LeBron and AD outplayed Murray and Jokic in that series, and they lost the series in 5 because LeBron outplayed Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray hit 2 big shots, and Michael Porter Jr. made everything he got his hands on, and Aaron Gordon had a dominant game 3, and the Lakers just got no contributions from role players outside of Austin Reeves. And again, if I would have put AD at 10, it just would have been an issue. It would have just been a whole other issue. And that's the thing. There was no version of this top 11 that wasn't going to piss people off. But at the end of the day, all I can do is kind of give you guys my reasoning and hear you guys out when you disagree, and we can go from there. But as I'm going to reread this comment from earlier, as the gentleman shared earlier, the rankings are not important. The basketball is the only thing that matters.